Welcome to the Cottagers Podcast, a production by Cottage Pastures.
On this podcast, we discuss rural living, homesteading, and small-scale farming.
You'll hear conversations and interviews about the realities of modern life and returning to the land.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Carissa.
We're the founders of Cottage Pastures and your hosts on the Cottagers Podcast. Matt and Rachel, I'm extremely excited to have an opportunity to talk with you guys. I'm glad you're here. This is a unique one because a lot of people that we talk to either starting homesteads or starting farms or for-profit businesses, and I've spoken to one other couple. It was a really neat conversation doing something similar to you all, and so I'm extremely excited to learn more about what you're working on and how you guys got to the point you are with Lumen Christi and just all the things that have happened and what brings you guys here to where you're at today. So let me just pause there. I'm going to pass it over to you guys. Just bring us up to speed, maybe introduce yourselves and tell us kind of how you guys have gotten to where you are today and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, my name's Rachel and my husband, Matt.
Yep.
And we are farming here at a new nonprofit in Wisconsin called Lumen Christi Farm, but it wasn't always this nonprofit. It goes back, Matt was a third generation mink farmer, and I was born in the city, a small town in Wisconsin, but I was a city girl. So I didn't even know what a combine was when I met Matt. My farming background was zero, besides driving through the beautiful countryside of Wisconsin. And Matt was always a farmer.
My family's been into farming my whole life. So that's been kind of how I wanted to raise my kids and the different values that creates. So.
Yeah, and when we first met, we met over the internet. And when we met, I spent a lot of time in the country. And my mom told me that I should spend a lot of time out there because if I was going to become a farmer, that was going to be my life. And I needed to make sure I was liked that lifestyle. And it brought us together, the farming, because deep down inside, I was a farm girl at heart and loved the life out there. And I fell in love with Matt and the country. So that's how our marriage started, with the city girl marrying a farmer boy.
And Rachel's right. That's exactly the way she was. She likes to can. She likes to be in the garden. Likes to be out there tending to the animals. She was really meant to be a country girl, I think.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, I don't even remember talking about, I don't think we talked about this before. Did you say mink farming?
That's right. Yep. I was a third generation mink farmer. So when we came to our new place here, that's what we did for a few years. And then the market totally fell out. It was the worst market in the history of mink farming. So we had to change gears, change to something else. And we had just built everything up to that point. So
yeah, in the first year of farming, we came here and left the family farm to kind of begin on our own. We wanted a piece of land on our own and to raise our family. And so we came here, and that was the year everything kind of fell apart. We had some sick animals, and so our herd wasn't healthy, as well as we also had the financial issues. And so we started our marriage early on with having babies and having kind of a really tough time on the farm. And so the first 6 years of being here farming was extremely hard with the financial stuff and with trying to get the farm built and running correctly. And so we had some tough years in the beginning where it was really tough.
Yeah. You know, that's actually an interesting point. So I think a lot of, there seems to be this conversation maybe emerging about preparedness for like homesteading or farming. And, for folks that are like moving away from city life out to, the countryside, that, there's for so long, there's been like this rosy picture painted online about how pretty it is and beautiful it is and what a great experience it is. But then there's this cautionary tales that are starting to come out about, how difficult it is to get started, how expensive it can be, how challenging it can be, difference in culture. But what I don't hear a lot about is where people are saying, like these things happen, but they persist through them for some reason, like they overcome them. If you're, like you guys are saying, I mean, it sounds like you're beginning your marriage, Rachel, this is certainly probably a culture shock in the country for you too. At least it's different. And then you're both married, and then you have children. Like, what does that even look like? How do you? Where does that strength come to persist, or like, what did that look like?
Sure. Well,
it really brought our faith our faith right to the forefront, which is kind of where we changed to now with the retreat center we're doing. But our faith was involved really early on. You've got to have faith because you've got live animals out there that are growing. You've got crops that are growing. Everything's in God's hands, and you can only do so much as a farmer. And then you've got to kind of toss it out there to God, because he's the one who's going to bring the rain down, let the sun shine. Especially when the years we had sick animals, fighting those different things can be really hard without that concrete faith kind of.
Absolutely. And we actually, right in the middle of our troubles on the farm, we kept going. We felt like God wanted us to be here, and we continued to try to make things work with God's help, and doors would open and some doors would close, and we just always trusted God. And then right in the middle of that, we actually lost a son of ours. I had a stillbirth. It was my fourth child. And so, we thought that the darkness on the farm that we were experiencing was kind of really tough, but going through that as a couple, we learned that early on in the pregnancy that our son had some multiple problems from a genetic disorder, and that he most likely wasn't going to live. And so I remember, being in the darkness of the farm and wondering what was going to happen, and then experiencing that within our family life was one of the darkest times of our life, and trying to find hope and light in the midst of that darkness together as a family. But becoming a farmer really helped me to experience death in a different way. I was going to experience the death of my child, and becoming a farmer was able to not only welcome new life, because I had 3 healthy babies, human babies, but we also welcomed mink babies, and loved the new life on the farm. And that was my favorite part. But the times when the animals would die, or the little babies, weren't strong enough and they would pass away, those lessons that you learn on the farm, you start to understand death and life in a new way. And I think by becoming a farmer, I was able to embrace that moments of my life when I was going to experience death of my child. Just be more prepared, because I've seen death on a farm. I've tried to understand it better and know that that's part of life and death. And so when our son did pass away, during that whole journey we had with him, from 20 weeks finding out to 38 weeks when he was born, we came together as a family, and we just embraced our faith and knew that God would help us through that. And he was watching over us, and he knew what was going to happen. And so same things with the farm. We didn't know what was going to happen with our farm, because right after our son passed away, our mink farm, we had to make a decision that we just couldn't continue mink farming. Like, it wasn't going to work. But we, just as the unknowns of where we were going to be going with that child that we were carrying, like, was he going to be born alive? Were we going to be able to meet him? How was the birth even going to happen? That gave us strength to be able to embrace the unknowns of where the farm was going as well. So once we went through that, right after he was born is when we transitioned from mink to goats. And so about 3 months after our son was born, and we had to go through his funeral, and all that was really tough. But then we made the transition to raising goats. And so we knew that we could trust, if God helped us through that, and we could get through that, and it could be the toughness of our whole pregnancy with him and the unknowns. If we could get through that together, like, we could get through anything really, with God's help. And so we embraced a new journey and trusted that the Lord was going to show us a new way.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it takes incredible strength to be able to even share stories like that. So I thank you for doing it, because I know those situations, the reality of death in that way affects so many people. And I think it's important that people know they're not alone in those experiences. So thank you for sharing. So here's the thing. I shared this with you guys right before. We used to raise goats. Not a big fan of goats. Goats are a funny little thing. This is turning out to be one of my favorite farm journey conversations thus far, from minks, which I got to be honest, I'm not really sure what a mink is. Maybe you can describe that. And
I didn't either. When I met him.
I'm not really sure what I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure what the market for mink is. So I'm kind of curious about that. And then the goat, let's start this. Okay, let's talk about the minks. Let's talk about the goats, and then we're going to talk about where you guys are now. So maybe just tell me about the mink situation. This, like, for someone who doesn't know what this is.
The mink are a small animal. If you know what a ferret is, excuse me, similar to a ferret, but they've basically they're used for different fur garments, from fur coats to hats to boots and purses. You name it. They make any kind of fur garment out of it. They're sold all over the world. You know, you don't see that much in the U.S. As far as fur coats anymore, but a lot gets sold to China, South Korea, the cold areas like Russia area, Ukraine area.
Yeah, so the farming of it, they use the whole animal for different things. Mink oils, they would use different parts of the animals to use. So it was a beautiful discovery of learning about the mink farm, because as well as me, I didn't know what a mink farm was, and I entered into it completely. And then when we got the goats, we actually decided we didn't know anything about goat farming. So like anybody entering into something we didn't know, but we liked smaller animals. We had this big barn we built, and when we couldn't raise mink anymore, we thought, well, what are we going to do? So my dad helped us find a goat camp down in Texas. So Matt and I went for a whole week down to a ranch down there to learn about raising goats. And we came home from that goat camp, and about a couple weeks later, we actually got a herd of goats ourselves. We started out with 75 wild goats from Wyoming. And they came on a trailer one night. The guy was running late. He was bringing them out from Wyoming, and we prepared one of our buildings that used to be a mink farm building, and got it all ready for the goats. And that night he came and he delivered 75 goats, and they were wild. They came off that trailer just jumping around. And I told Matt the next day, I said, I don't know about this. Like, let's send them back. And
that was a little bit of scary experience when he pulls up in the dark at night and you see all these goats coming off of the back of this truck.
Yeah, and we handled them the next day and didn't have a clue. You know, we handled some at the goat camp, but so it was a process. We spent about 5 years with our goats. We ended up with about 350 goats filling our barn, breeding stock. So we'd have a ton of baby goats, and it was a lot of work. And then we also didn't have a lot of land, enough land. We thought we could rent some land, but in our area, it's really hard to find land. And so we kind of started to think that our goat farm wasn't really going to be very successful either. And so because we couldn't find land, we had to buy hay, and it's so expensive.
We ended up having to basically buy like half of our hay each year, which just didn't work out with the margin wise. And we couldn't find land to buy or to rent. There's just too many big dairies in Wisconsin. So
yeah, so we started up our own butcher facility. We learned to butcher goats because our customers all wanted us to buy fresh goat meat off the farm. And so we thought, hey, this would help, you know. So we tried a lot of things, really. And at that point, we were, you know, just farming. I mean, big time. It was our family. We kind of felt alone, and like getting tired out was really what we were experiencing. Kind of burnout, making it work, and really liked the goats, really enjoyed, you know, working with them. But at one point, a couple years ago, we really kind of hit burnout. And we, at that point, asked God, we decided to take a break from our full-time farming and just we call it our family sabbatical. We said, we need to take some time. Let's not rush into something else. Like, let's take some time to really discern what the Lord is calling us to do, because we've built 2 farms, and building and kind of 2 farms is a lot of work in about 10-year span. So building one and ripping it down and then starting over and revamping the whole barn really kind of got us to burnout, and we needed to spend some time with the Lord and discerning. So that's kind of how we got our new call to start Lumen Christi Farm at that point.
Sure. Very neat. I can already tell you, I mean, you guys display a character of persistence that I think is incredibly admirable. I mean, I know we're just talking really briefly here, but, you know, most people, I think right now who are in the agricultural space at all understand the challenges and the difficulties of the farm life. Like, it's not just production, but keeping animals alive, learning how to address them, fencing, infrastructure. Then you got to figure out how do you sell it? Where's the market?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, it's just it's quite admirable. What was so you 75 goats is not a small amount of goats to start with either. So like how like that's a lot of goats to just be like, hey, we're going to try this out?
And this was actually right before like winter was going to be setting in. So this was like late fall. And we knew they were coming pregnant actually. But we thought it was going to be like into spring when they'd be having the babies. And it turned out to be like right in the middle of winter. It was colder than you could imagine out there.
Sure.
And all of a sudden I walked out there one night and here there's babies on the ground. I ran in the house. I'm like, Rachel, we got babies coming.
We didn't know what to do. We're like, oh, and of course the mom wasn't taking care of the baby, so we became goat farmers really fast. So we had to figure out what to do and learn, and it was a really beautiful process of not, learning how to do something together and as a family with our kids, how to take care of goats, and we did, and it was a great journey. So.
What did you think you were like? What did you think the outcome of the goats was going to be? Was it going to be for meat, or was it like breeding stock? Like, what did you think they were going to be for?
Yeah, we actually had found when we were searching for what type of farming we could do, there was a big market need in our area, kind of around Illinois, that they needed more farmers, more ranchers to get goats. So we were raising them for meat, and we thought we were going to ship them to this auction down, in Illinois. And soon we found out when our local people, different cultures love the goat meat. And so we started having all kinds of different people come to the farm when they found out we had goat here. So we thought we were just going to raise goats and ship them out. And it turned out to be a journey of selling off the farm and then finding a way to market our meat, and then even becoming a custom butcher facility in order to provide meat directly off of the farm. So it was a weird, totally not what we ever thought it was going to be. And it's kind of, our journey has always been that, going with something and then kind of being allowed to lead to where it's going to go. And
right. So do you still have do you still do custom slaughter, custom butchery?
We do not.
Yeah, it kind of came to the point where a lot of the different groups said, gee, if you could slaughter them for us, you'd have so many more customers. And we found out it really wasn't the case, because at the price point that we needed to be at to make that whole thing make sense for us, it was just about the price point where they could go and buy some frozen meat somewhere else or some fresh meat somewhere else. But we had to get that being a farmer, whereas some of the hobby farmers could sell their goats off cheap, just because they had a couple around or whatever. So they would really look around for different price points. So we just weren't butchering enough that way.
Yeah. And like I said, at that point, we only were open for a short time, and we hit our burnout time, and it was time to completely turn to the Lord. And we put our hands up and we said, okay, God, we trust you. We know you're going to lead us and you have a plan for us. We're really confused because we've tried and nothing seems to be working out. So we completely surrendered to the Lord, and we always were on a path with the Lord. He called us to farming, and farming is a call. That people who farm are doing God's work. But kind of like Mother Teresa said, there was a call within a call. So here we're called to be farmers, and that's what we dreamt for our family. But then within that call, God called us to do something even deeper with the call to farm. And we started, my background is in youth ministry. So before I met Matt as a farmer, I was a youth minister in a parish and did religious education coordinating, and did it for 8 years before we had our first child. And so my background in ministry, I love sharing our Catholic faith with other people. And so it was early on into our discerning that both of us were reading the daily readings, every day. We just tried to connect, whether it was together or by ourselves. And when we would do it by ourselves, we both would come back then and to each other and we were like, did you hear what I heard? And we would listen to the word of God, and it was filled with agricultural themes. And those came alive for us. At one point, we thought maybe we'd leave the farm. Matt was ready to move to Florida where it's warm and just be done with farming completely. And so to then hear the word of God and hear these agricultural teachings that were so filled in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and to hear them and really just know that how much we love farming and how we didn't really want to leave, but we needed to find a way to make it work. We started to want to share that with other people. And so we had this vision hey, maybe we should do some kind of ministry out here, have families that are interested that are in the city or just in the country that don't get to experience what we get to experience with food production and taking care of farm animals and the nature out here where we live. We have 56 acres. Could we invite people to come out and then we can teach them about these scriptures, these parables come alive out here? Like we're living, it's a living classroom when you're on a farm. And we wanted, so that was our very thought. It started to instill in us this little voice that said, let's maybe open up, I don't know, somehow something that people can come and families can come. We can pray together, we can work together. And so at that point, we actually started, talking about maybe getting sheep. And you can only imagine my family after all we've been through. And all of a sudden, we still had goats, but we actually experienced, unfortunately, another struggle. We got some disease run through our goat herd. We got all 3 diseases that goats can get. And so we were trying to get rid of the disease, and our vet was working with us, and it just wasn't, we were happy to cull a lot of our animals. And so we went from 350 goats to when we kind of stopped, we kept 60. So the workload was a lot less, and we were able to start thinking about getting sheep. And I remember going to a farm that Matt found a retired vet that had sheep, and he had a clean herd of sheep, so we didn't have to worry about disease. And we went to his farm, and we were thinking about buying sheep, and because they're so biblical, and we just thought I don't know where this came from. And we went to his field, and for the first time I was out with him, and he said to us, sheep are different from goats. And we had our goats, we raised our goats in the barn. So to see the sheep on pasture, and we went with this man, and he said, now don't make a lot of noise or sudden movements, because they don't know your voice. They know me as the shepherd, and they're going to run away. And so I remember we had our 8-year-old son with us and then our other daughter, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to keep him still? Well, we got out in his UTV out to the middle of the field, and he called, sheep, sheep. And they all came running from that pasture. And it was the most spiritual experience I had. I thought, that is what we've been teaching people about the Good Shepherd and listening to the voice of God. And
at that time we were listening to all the readings, like Rachel said, and like everything's talking about sheep and the shepherds, and all these different readings were just aligning with what we were kind of wanting to do.
Yeah. And so we got home, and my son, he ended up making, after about 5 minutes, couldn't sit still. And then they all took off and ran away. And, we said, we want people to experience this. Like, this is so cool. And we got home, and the reading for the next day said, your teacher has spoken. Listen to your teacher. You're going to have lambs out on your pasture. And we thought, oh my gosh, this is what we have to do. So by Christmas that year, August, we kind of started discerning. By Christmas, we bought a herd of 10 sheep and started getting into becoming shepherds. And that we got some donkeys and started the idea. We wrote a letter to our bishop and told him what was on our heart, that we wanted to somehow create a retreat center or a place where we could invite people to come. And right away we met with him, and our bishop gave us permission to be able to do this type of work out here. And so that's kind of how slowly the vision for Lumen Christi came about. However, it's evolved really into a complete nonprofit now. So it was like it always is. We come up with a little call that God has for us, and we go through it, and it continues to, grow and evolve the way the Holy Spirit wants it to work. And so that's, like
Rachel had mentioned, she had been into youth ministry before we got married, but she's just got, all the farming we've done, we worked together and we tried to make things work, but like after kind of slowing it down and stepping back for a little while, it just felt totally right, because Rachel has just got the perfect personality to run a retreat center. She's always been a great speaker, great in front of people, all those different qualities that you would want as somebody to lead something like this.
Yeah, and Matt's pretty good too. So we both have become farmers and
I'm a little on the quieter side, but I'm, I do a lot of the farm chores and a lot of the normal farm end of it.
Yeah, but the two of us together as a married couple, it's been really special. We took right away, we started asking the intercession of Saint Isidore the farmer, and we didn't know he had a wife, Blessed Maria. And all of a sudden we were researching more about Isidore, and we're like, oh my gosh, she had a wife. And the two of them, it seemed like we really fit. The two of them just like the values that we have were who they were. And they also lost a son, their only son. And so they experienced marriage, the grief of losing a child. They experienced farming. And then what was really cool is, because we think Blessed Maria did this, it turned out from being like, this is our farm, to like welcoming people to come, to giving the entire farm to the Lord and saying, this is the Lord's. And so it became a nonprofit. And now all the farming operations are, belong to Lumen Christi as a 501c3. And we are part of our mission is to all the food that we grow will be given to local food pantries. So this last summer, the whole garden that we grew with all volunteers and with people that just came out and gave plants and seeds, and we were able to donate the whole harvest to people who need it. And it was Maria and Isidore had a love for the poor. And so we can't distribute food directly from our farm, but we can grow it here and then work with local organizations who assist people who are going through food insecurity. And it was such a beautiful thing that this year we've expanded the gardens, as well as we hope to get all of our lamb meat to Green Bay's pantry, Paul's Pantry in Green Bay. They have a large ethnic culture that would really prefer lamb than pork and beef, really. So to bring the light of Christ into the darkness of not only the people who are experiencing food security, but also the people that come to our farm. Our mission now is to grow food and faith. So we have different events and different retreats and things that people can come to, and they can have these immersion experiences with the food production, the farm animals, and the nature that so many people long for. And going back to our roots as humans, to take care of the garden and the animals and the Garden of Eden. And so when people come out here, they get a chance to do that and to be part of that community, and seeing people loving it as much as we do is so rewarding. And it's been a great journey of forming this new nonprofit.
And from the very start, we didn't want it to be like a petting zoo situation, because there's enough of those around. But Rachel really takes the groups out and really can tie in all the biblical aspects of tending the flocks. We go out to see the sheep, all the different stories, that are in the Bible about the sheep and our shepherd. So tying that all in is really, really neat when you have these groups out here.
Very neat. So, okay. So real quick. So mink farming to goat farming to a flock of sheep to a nonprofit that is now giving away the produce and the harvest. What a story. This is so cool. So what has the response been? Like, what are you guys seeing from people? Is demand growing? Are people coming out to see you now for the immersion experiences? Like, what's the response look like?
Well, what's really cool is that when people come into the driveway at Lumen Christi, it's like a 1/4-mile drive lined with pine trees. And the moment people come, they feel peace. They feel, so they come and they get to experience it, and they're just leaving.
We've had people come and they say, we thought we were coming to give and to volunteer our time, but we actually walked away today with way more than we ever thought we were going to get from this experience. So to hear that from different people is just really amazing.
Yeah, and to see people connecting things that, they don't get to experience. We just, while they were washing wool with people, we just had a shearing day when they got to see this stuff, and we connected to their faith. And so that's what's really neat. So they're growing both in faith and in, their farming opportunities. There's so much opportunities in agritourism these days, but to connect it with our Catholic faith, I think people are experiencing the light of Christ, which is what our mission is, to be the light of Christ in the darkness of the world. And so whether they're going through tough times themselves, when they're learning to trust the shepherd and they can see what real shepherding is and they can grow closer to the good shepherd, it's really been a beautiful thing. And I think people are growing closer to Christ when they come here, and because of the lessons they've learned from being a part of it all. So yeah, it's been a great response. We're growing. We just started last May, and it's already this year, some of the same groups are coming back. We're connecting with our parishes and schools in the diocese, to offer them to come up. So it's growing in God's good time. And we know that this is God's work, God's farm, God's holy land that we're taking care of. And we're just stewards. And so it's going to grow the way that God blesses it. And he already has. And it's really cool to know that it's beyond a mission that Matt and I could have ever done with the farm on our own. We tried a lot on our own.
Yeah, it's pretty evident, because when we were going through all these different types of farming, we would try to basically push to make things happen, to make things work, to get it done. But it actually took the stepping back and taking a look at what was really important, starting the retreat center and that's really been leading us where we need to go.
Yeah. I'm so encouraged talking with you all. And I really appreciate you sharing, the whole story from where you guys have come to where you are today. I'm sure there are people who are going to want to be in contact with you and to reach out. How can people support you all in what you're doing now, and how can they get a hold of you? What does that look like?
Absolutely. Well, we have a website, so it's www.lumenchristifarm.org. And so there's ways to contact us through our website. We also have a Facebook page. But absolutely, so we need people to come to be part of the mission, to follow Isadora and Maria with us in their footsteps, and to believe in the values that they did, and come and help out at the farm, or monetarily help support it through donations that can help directly give to the poor, so that we can do that. So yeah, we're looking for people to kind of help fund the flock. This is God's flock of sheep. And then also be garden givers, to give of their time and their ability to pay some money to help us in our mission. So absolutely, any help is welcome. That would be great. And so they can contact us through our website. It would be a great way to get a hold of us and be a part of this mission. It's for everybody. So yeah, and know that it's through the grace of God that all of this is happening, and they can be part of that beautiful movement. It's neat.
It's inspiring to see just the mission grow, and all the volunteers we gained last year, and a lot of them have now become friends, and it's just become a really welcoming place. It's really fun.
Very neat. Well, guys, hey, I really appreciate you being here. This is an incredible opportunity to talk with both of you, and I'm very excited to see where Lumen Christi Farm grows over the next few years. So thank you guys both for being here, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, and we just encourage all families to get involved somehow in growing things and being connected to the earth. And so if you're looking at homesteading, looking at farming, whatever it is, grow something, raise an animal. It'll bring your family together. It'll bring you closer to God. So God bless you.
I agree. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the Cottagers Podcast. For more information on today's episode, check out the show notes or visit us at cottagepastures.com. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode.